Don't worry, I'm wearing pants. The cat won't try to kill me tonight like he did the last time you were on with me.
Alrighty, guys. Well, if you're joining us here live, we're going to be talking Dungeons and Dragons tonight, and we'll be starting here in a few minutes. We're just going to give everybody a chance to join us for our session before we get started, so we don't have to redo everything. So we're just going to kind of sit around and just mumble jumble around for a little bit until for maybe about 4 or 5 minutes, and just give everyone a chance to join up. So, you guys interested at all in the All-Star game or any of that stuff?
I'll flip it on after we're done, but I really haven't watched a lot of baseball, so I was happy for a lot. Sounds like the home run derby was fun if you were into that.
Yeah,
it's the same here. I mean, I may flip it on if there's a little bit left on when we're done, but I'm not really worried about it.
Yeah.
I've watched more Wimbledon than I have baseball, so.
Yeah, I mean, I love baseball, but when they get these fictional things to get together, I'm not a big fictional guy,
It used to be such a big deal.
Yep. Bubba Husky's here. Hi, Bubba.
An interleague for me just killed it.
I think they put a little bit more emphasis on it when they actually were playing for home field advantage in the World Series, and then it made it a little more interesting, but then they got rid of that. So now it's like, they don't really care again, so I don't really care again.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, if you're just joining us, guys, we're going to be just babbling for a few minutes, giving everyone a chance to join up. So I appreciate it. Bubba Husky's here. Roger Ward, good evening. How are you? And we'll get started about 8:05 or so. This way we don't have to, kind of reintroduce everyone again and give everyone a chance to join up. So probably be a light night tonight with the All-Star game going on, but you never know.
Yeah.
I do have quite a few Dungeons and Dragons subscribers on my channel, so hopefully they'll pop in.
Now, I don't have the chat on, so like if any questions come up or anything, go ahead and throw them out there, kind of thing,
Sure.
Yeah, same here. I've just got one screen on and ID's filling it.
Guys.
I'm the only one, so it's all up to me. Oh, good Lord. So yeah, I was the reason I ended up getting a Gloomhaven was we went up to Brandon, Florida. There was a old time pottery shop. The wife wanted to get some outside furniture, and we pulled in, and it's like set back in a little shopping center area. And as I was driving towards the old time pottery, I looked up, and there was a sign that said "Cool Stuff Inc." And I'm like, what? No, they have a store here? You gotta be kidding me. So after we shopped at the old time pottery, we didn't find what we were looking for. So there was a Home Depot. So the wife was like, oh, I want to go to Home Depot. I said, I'm going to stop in here. So she went to Home Depot. I went into Cool Stuff Inc., looked around, and they had a big Magic the Gathering tournament going on in there. And probably maybe 100 board games or something. And so I was looking around, and I was like, yeah, I think I'll get this. I think I'll get this game.
Yeah, there's a big
time machine. How you doing?
Big Magic crowd around here. The store I used to work at, the sports store, used to host Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments, and sold Pokemon.
Two biggest around here are Yu-Gi-Oh and Warhammer 40K. Those are the two biggest ones around here.
Well, I couldn't believe there was probably. We were there at 1 o'clock, and on their board it had the tournament started at 12, and then they were having a second tournament at 6 o'clock, and it was packed. It was packed. There was probably 50 to 60 guys in there playing, and I'm like, wow, how about that?
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up getting it. I'm glad you got it. So now we can play co-op together.
And Gloomhaven, you enabler. It's your fault.
I'm good at that. I'm really good at that.
Hey. Ron pushes the PC, IDJ pushes the cards and dice, folks. Just remember, the first one's always free.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. And, we'll talk later. What are you looking for, man? I can hook you up.
There you go. My brother has about $6,000 worth of HeroScape stuff. Wow. That's a big collection there.
Yeah, it is.
We used to have people come because we sold the Magic cards, but couldn't do the tournaments because someone else had the rights to them. And when a new set came out, we couldn't keep that stuff in the store. People would buy it by the box.
Yeah. Yep.
Just to get those one or two rare cards, and never played the card game. So
I think on Steam, it's pretty reasonable on Steam for some of the versions. They got 2012, 2013, 2014 editions are pretty reasonably priced. You can get the whole set for like $20 now.
have you played?
If you buy the set that just comes out, it's like $50.
Oh yeah.
Each expansion's like $5 or $8, and there's like 28 expansions for each of the different characters, and it's crazy amount. But you wait a couple years, go back and buy the old stuff. It's real cheap.
Card game on the computer, Hearthstone. Is that it?
Hearthstone, yeah, that's one by Blizzard. It's not on Steam, but
people still play that?
It's semi-popular. I don't think it's certainly not as popular as Magic the Gathering. But there's a lot of other games. Total War actually has their own card game version out there. There's actually a version of Gwent, which is from Witcher the Gathering, the computer game.
Yeah.
And they made Gwent part of the game that you could actually play, and then it was so popular that they actually created it outside the game now. So, hey, D. Scott Howard, how you doing? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We've given everybody a chance to join up, and if they missed out in the beginning, well, that's their fault. We're going to be talking. We got a lot to talk about, lots of stuff to talk about tonight. So we're going to be talking Dungeons and Dragons. Whew, it's been a while since we actually had Dungeons and Dragons on my channel, but fortunately, some of my fellow Dungeons and Dragons players have decided to join me tonight to help give players out there some of their expertise, some of the things they learned, some of their likes, dislikes, their general philosophies, their opinions of things. And I'm very honored to be hosting with two of my fellow Dungeons and Dragons players tonight. So, first of all, Mr. Retrosports Network, Ron Juckett. How you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm pretty good. Good, ID. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for joining me. And of course, not to be outdone, the brand new, aka Tabletop Sports Delaware.
Got it.
Ooh, I got it now. It's going to take me a while. He just switched his name on us to throw us off, but great guy. How are you doing tonight?
IDJ, I am doing great. It's glad to be here with you, Ron. Good to be with you also, and really looking forward to talking some D&D and catching up and answering any questions that the chat has, and hopefully this will be a fruitful conversation.
Yeah, I'm really hoping for it. So I mentioned this, but if you haven't seen our episodes, we did a 5 or 6 short sessions together with a couple other really good guys, and we had a great time doing it. And you can check these out in on my channel, and we had a good time playing that. It was our first experience for some of them playing online Dungeons and Dragons. Obviously, since we don't live together, we have to do the online version and stuff. So, but from what I understand, this is kind of inspired Tabletop Sports into getting back into the flow with his gaming group of Dungeons and Dragons. And so now you are doing it. You're doing it face to face. So, first question.
Mhm.
Was it hard to find a local group? Did you already know these people? And how was the conversion from doing it on the computer and now going to face and face? Kind of outline your experiences for the players, if you don't mind, or for the viewers.
As far as the gaming group, it's a group that my brother Ron, the co-host for the channel, y'all remember Ron. He had been playing games with these guys for quite some time, quite a few years. And in 2016, they kind of dragged me into it. Two of the guys were homebrewing a game that they were trying to create, so they wanted some people to help play. So I came along, and my first character was a human archer named Jolene Biggins. And started to kind of learn how to role play, the rules, roll the dice, what it is. And we did some other games. My first jaunt as a game master was a Star Wars Saga, a very short session, and I had the guys hooked with an NPC that was getting them started in the first session. And near the very end of it, he was like, "What could go wrong?" And then he kind of like got shot by an assassin, kind of like Kate in NCIS at the end of season 2. And everybody was heartbroken. And I was like, wow, I could do this. And it never really came back around to me doing it until IDJ was going to do Dungeons and Dragons online. And I was like, you know what? Yeah,
I'm an enabler.
Look. He's an enabler. But really got into it and learning how to use Fantasy Grounds, and that was a technical hurdle. And we got to one point where he was like, you guys have really got to step up your not ROLL role playing, but your ROLE role playing as far as stepping into a role. And I'm going to tell you, that was a catalyst for really just opening up. I've noticed the difference in my home gaming group. I've noticed a difference as a dungeon master for the past couple of months or so. And it's taken off, and it's fantastic. And I really do enjoy it. It's a very social game. We don't sit around, hand to pinky and everything and worship up devils or anything like that. That's not what this is. There's a stigma attached to it, but it's just a game. It's sitting down. It is being social. It is the players telling a story with their characters, and what the dungeon master really essentially should be is just a liaison between what the players' characters want to do, and then finding the role that best allows them to do it. And I've been having a blast. I really have. Thank you, IDJ, for getting me back in hard on this, man. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome for that. And I had a great time with all of our players that we experienced throughout our adventure there. We had a couple players that left and joined in the middle. In fact, Ron was one of our substitutes and had never played before. Is that correct? You had never.
I've never done Dungeons and Dragons. I've done a little bit of role playing. Done some Star Wars. My wife has done some gaming, and her buddy. So like we did a couple sessions, and they did a lot more. But I had done a character sheet before. Actually, had been offered to play Dungeons and Dragons back in the early '80s as a preteen, and just wasn't what I wanted to do. And so no, I really came in quite cold to the whole experience and really enjoyed it.
So what did if there's players out there, people that are going to watch this, later on, hopefully, and they're new or inexperienced players and they're looking to get into D&D, what could you say is, hey, I've never done this and I joined the group and I had a good time? What can you share that inspired you to join something, whether it's an online group or face-to-face group, and what kind of made that final decision that I'm going to take the jump and get into this?
Well, you should always be willing to take a risk, and certainly for someone who pretty much does sports and history and stuff like that, to jump into the worlds of wizards and warlocks and dragons and all that was something new to me. And so, like, hey, if it didn't work, it didn't work. There was no harm done if I didn't like it. it was just worth the risk. And you gave me all this stuff to watch, and so it for me, because I kind of liked the whole idea of the challenge. Okay, let's see if we can do this. And the first week I was terrible, and the second week I got better, and by the last couple, we really melded together as a group. And I didn't really know you or Chris or certainly Dylan or Dog or Herb. And by the time that we finished, we really melded together into this tight group.
And you won the game. You were the only one that didn't die.
I survived, man.
That's true. That is true. You were the only lone survivor. And talking about that is, we talked. A lot of people don't know this, and I'm going to kind of spoiler alert for everyone. But after our sessions, we kind of sit together still and talk about things and how the session went. And I would kind of critique you guys and tell you, this is what I see. This is what we should think about for next session. And you guys took everything I said to heart. You didn't take it as a negative. And I think everyone, as you said, kind of formed into, it's kind of like watching a movie on TV where in the beginning, you got all these characters doing different things, but by the end of the movie, they're all fighting for one another. And that's kind of what I was experiencing on my side. Chris, what do you think?
That last episode, we just gelled. Everything that we had worked on for session 0, session 02, broadcast 1, 2, 3, and I think we had 5. But that last one, man, everything that we had been working for, it came together and we just knocked it out of the park. I felt that way. I know the rest of the guys felt that way. Ron, I know you did. I mean, that was the pièce de résistance for the whole thing, was that final episode, just our coming of age. And it was fun.
And I wish we would have continued on, because I think the group, we kind of already said, well, going into this, we were only going to play, 4 sessions was what we were working at. And then we extended it an extra session because we actually had OG join us in the first session, but then he had to drop out. We had to find another player. So we had a little mix mash there. So I decided to give us an extra session to see if we can get everything to go in together. So we knew it was only going to be a certain amount of sessions as opposed to like a long campaign. Yeah. And so, going into that last adventure, we kind of, this was the pinnacle. This is what you guys were striving for to try and complete during this. It wasn't like we were going to keep going on, which is unfortunate because I would have liked to keep going on, but we had the holidays coming up. We took a break, and now it's, we look back and all of a sudden it's been 7 months already, which is kind of my fault.
Don't worry about that. Stuff just happens.
Yeah, I mean, it might not have been a good time to start up until a certain time or whatever, but it's definitely, we've talked about role playing. Hey, Viper Dave, how you doing? Thanks for coming by. We do have Sports Time Machine, Viper Dave, Bubba Husky, Roger Ward, D. Scott Howard, all in the chat. Thank you guys for coming on by. Don't forget to hit that like button. Show our wonderful panel that you appreciate all their time and effort coming out tonight to talk with us. And share some of their experiences. So we talk about role playing, and we talk about role playing, ROLL and ROLE. Mm-hmm. And that is the hardest. That's the hardest thing to get across to people, because there's so much involved in talking about role playing. We could actually just literally talk about role playing for 2 hours tonight, because it's that intricate. It's not, D&D is not a tactical combat system, right? It's not supposed to be a tactical combat system.
No.
It's supposed to be a role-playing game. If you look at your book, Chris, you probably got a book there. It's going to say a role-playing game right at the top.
Yep. Matter of fact, says it right on the cover.
Yep.
Right there it is on the cover. Role-playing game.
Yep. There you go.
I know for me, the toughest part was, as you said, you're coming from a top-down perspective. You're overlooking these people, and you're supposed to act. And you roll dice and you react to the dice roll. And the hard thing was you can't look at the, oh crap, I needed to roll a 12 and I rolled an 8. Like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. How do we get out of this? I mean, as just from those first couple sessions of trying to not play it as a game, but write it as a collaborative story. But the deeper you get into it, the more you kind of forget the game playing elements of it, and it just kind of becomes familiar. Because the first time I sat there was, I think it was just ID and myself. Maybe we did the open session. Here's your 6-sider. Here's your 4-sider. Here's your 20-sider. Here's your 2-sider. Okay. Here's your tools, but don't refer to them in the actual game itself. Okay. All right. Have fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
But again, that took practice. But I mean, so.
Every group I've probably participated in, probably between 10 and 12 long-term groups, and then I've been part of probably another 6 or 8 that were just short-term groups. I remember I was in a group for just 1 or 2 sessions, and then I decided it wasn't for me, so I didn't go back. But every group plays differently. Every group plays Dungeons and Dragons differently because they all have their own thoughts and views on what should be played. There's no right and wrong reason to play. The reason to get together and play is to have fun and have a good time. So if that's the goal, you can play Dungeons and Dragons as a tactical combat game. If that's what your group likes, then that's what your group likes. There's other groups I've been a part of that they never used like a table with miniatures or anything like that. It was all theater of their mind stuff. Okay, well, I'm going to go attack this orc. And then when the other guy goes, oh, I'm going to shoot the orc, you got to know that, oh my God, there's a guy standing between me and the other orc. So there's a wide variety of Dungeons and Dragons and styles out there.
And that's also something for new players to bear in mind. I mean, if you're looking for a group and you find either an online group or a face-to-face group in your neighborhood and you sit there and you play a session or two, I mean, give it at least a second session. The first session, you're going to have the awkwardness of not knowing with whom you're playing and getting to know them and maybe getting to understand what kind of behavior is both acceptable and expected. These may be players that have been playing with each other for a long time. But at least give it a second session, maybe a third. But if it's not for you, don't be afraid to pull out and say, guys, I appreciate it. This isn't for me. And look for another group. And you may find one on your first or second try. You may find one on your 10th or 15th try. But if this is something that you really want to do, don't put it off. Don't be discouraged because there is a right group out there for you. You just need to find it.
Oh, absolutely. And if you stumble on the same thing that I did and inherit someone else's character, I was lucky. I liked the character I was given. It would have been something similar to how I would have created a character to begin with, kind of smart, little bit of skills. So it was easy for me to get behind that character and try to bring things out of it. I mean, it would have been very difficult if I had been given, let's say, some lumber, Chris's character, for instance. That wouldn't have been my play style at all. I'm not the first one to run into a building and try to beat things up. Try to make do with it, but it was very easy, not very easy, because none of it was very easy, but it was okay for me to walk into this character and try to assume to play it. And by the time that we got to those last couple sessions, then it was my character that I was able to get something out of, as opposed to being the soap opera actor who goes, oh, by the way, you're Stud McStudley this week. Oh, okay. So yeah, so it's important if you join something in the middle that you try to make that character your own. And to piggyback on what Chris said, if you don't like it, just be polite and say it.
All right. I hate to interrupt our conversation, but I'm going to because this is a topic of conversation. This is not the Michigan logo. Just
Thank
keep that in
you.
mind. Okay.
Thank you.
That is
Mountain
not
Union.
the Michigan logo. That is my Mountain Union, where my daughter went to college and graduated from Mountain Union University. So I am the Mountain Union dad. So
Don't
I
they
have
have
to wear the Mountain Union.
17,000 Division III championships?
Yes, they have.
Okay.
I think
thought-
every year she was there, they won the or they won the national championship. I believe every year she was there, they won. They are perpetually in it every year. So, and there was actually there was a Mountain Union player drafted in the NFL. I think it was in 2017. One of the Mountain Union players got drafted by, I think it was Denver or Detroit. I forget who it was, but anyways.
Oh, cool.
They were a little worried that I was wearing a Michigan
Oh,
in
no.
the chat, and I
Oh,
was
I
like,
would have complimented you on your choice of clothing if you were. Trust me.
and we want to welcome MP Fox as well. So I guess the first thing we're talking Dungeons and Dragons is let's outline. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have heard about it, but they probably don't know what it is. So let's kind of outline. Chris, why don't you just outline what Dungeons and Dragons is if somebody comes up to you on the street and says, "Hey, I heard about Dungeons and Dragons. What is that?" What would you tell them?
I'd be like, well, you sit around a campfire or you sit around the table. Maybe that would be inappropriate nowadays, but that's still what I would fall back on. And you tell stories. And the stories, they mean something, something funny that happened to Uncle Larry. Remember when my brother did this? Basically, what Dungeons and Dragons is you are telling a story. You're creating a story. You have one player who runs the game or referees the game, and he is called the Dungeon Master. And he is going to have a pretty good grasp on the rules. And you are going to be one of perhaps 3 or more players, and you're each going to create a character in this story. And you're going to create a character that is going to have certain abilities and certain gear and certain things that they can do and a certain appearance and maybe languages you can speak. And it's going to define who your character is. And you don't have to worry about using a voice or anything like that, because it's very easy to fall into a voice if you're able to do it. However, you don't need to be able to do that in order to enjoy the game. And you're going to start in a place, maybe in a tavern, maybe in a dungeon, and you're going to have a few tasks that you can choose to do. And you're going to start to try to do those tasks. And if you want to do something, you tell the dungeon master, okay, well, I'm going to, I walk into this room and I look around and I'm like, I've got to find something that can help us open that door. And then the dungeon master would be like, well, roll me an investigation check. And you'll have numbers on your character sheet that tell you what to add to a die that you roll to tell you how well you did or how poorly you did. And you just work through the game like that. There is some combat. You can cast magical spells. But it's basically just, it's a great time to be with your friends and sit around and tell a story and socially interact. You tell the dungeon master what you want your character to do, and he finds the best rule that helps you do it the coolest way possible.
All right. So after I hear this from Chris, and I thank him, and I continue down the street, and I go up to Ron, and I say, Ron, I talked to your buddy down at the bar down there. He seemed a little drunk, and he was talking about Dungeons and Dragons to me, and the stuff that I learned was basically Dungeons and Dragons is like playing Lord of the Rings with my friends. Is that pretty accurate?
I wouldn't say that. I think there's a lot of creativity involved. It can be in Lords of the Rings. It can be as sci-fi and cosplay and as nerdy as you want, or you can just be, look, it could be just a group of, writer friends getting together and telling a giant story together. Or or acting out something that you're improvising together. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be geeky and nerdy. I mean, yes, it helps uh, to be some of the elements. You got to understand what you're doing, but no, I mean, as your Budweiser friend said, you know, you don't need to slip into voices, and you don't need to do that. It's just having a good time and telling a mutual story together.
Yeah. I'm throwing these questions out to you guys because, I mean, obviously,
Mhm.
I know the answers. I just want the people that are watching this either now or later on to hear it from players as opposed to Dungeon Master, because there's actually two sides to this
Mhm.
coin. We've only talked about one side of it. We'll talk about the other side later on. But
Yeah. If you've got a new player who wants to try to play, I mean, they're going to be like, "What do I need? What do I need?" Really, you don't need anything to play your first session. They're probably going to have pencils and erasers and character sheets there for you. They're probably going to have some dice you can borrow. You don't need a single thing to play your first session. If you're going to continue to play, get some pencils with erasers. You're going to have your character sheet, maybe some scratch paper for notes. For the cheap on Amazon, you can get polyhedral dice and not spend a lot for that. I mean, you're into it for maybe $6, $7, $8 if you've got Prime.
Yeah.
And you can play for a long time with that. If you want to get the basic rules, there's a free download on Wizards of the Coast. Same with character sheets.
I did not buy anything to play. I haven't
Yeah.
bought the player's handbook. Intended to. Once we started to get into the next session, I probably will. But I did that month without you know, we used was Fantasy Grounds. Was that the name of the software we used? So
Yep.
I used the demo version of that. I didn't have to put any money into it. All you had to do was invest your time. You
Yeah.
know, and just go into it with an open mind. You don't necessarily have to know everything about wizards and warlocks or that. And you're going to have a good time. You know, it's going to take a little bit to adjust, but once you get that, you make that first connection with another player, it just gets infinitely easier. And if
Yep.
you get a group like we did, where the four of us were kind of all connected at the end and had that great last session, or you
Yep.
get a moment early in that last session when dog talked to the dog, right? That was,
Yeah.
you know, and it just was, whoa, okay, and you just kind of all pick up on it, and it's amazing how quickly it can all come together.
Yeah.
Just let it happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Every once in a while, a player is going to have an intuitive moment like Dog did. He's like, I'm going to talk to the dog. Hey, did you see anything? And blam, we shortcutted and ended around everything IDJ had, and we were at end game for Van Dalen. So yeah, every once in a while, a player is going to have that intuitive lead. And every once in a while, you're going to muck around and you're never going to you won't be able to find your feet in the dark for 3 or 4 sessions. It really depends on how it's laid out. If the dungeon master really wants to get you going, if the dungeon master is like, nah, y'all can figure this out, you know, but endless possibilities and so much fun with your friends.
Oh, yeah.
Here's what I would say, and you guys can expand on it or disagree or whatever. But this is what I think. If you're new or inexperienced or have only played maybe a session or two, if you're invited to go play with your friends or a local group or whatever, there's really only 2 things that you have to show up with. 2 things. All right.
Mhm.
Number 1 would be a character idea about an idea about another person that you're going to be playing,
Mhm.
because you're not going to be who you are in this world. You're going to be in a far off world being somebody else. So having a good idea about a character, his motivations, his thoughts, his opinions on things, his attitude, his goals in life, whatever, kind of having a good idea with that. And then number 2, and this is just as important as having a character in mind, would be go in with a creative and imaginative mindset where no matter what happens, you're going to be able to figure a way to fix the problem or the situation by using your imagination.
I would agree with that. I think when it came time to create a character, or if you're looking to create a character for the first time, that would be where if you just draw a blank and aren't really sure the whole system of how that works, just take a movie character from a sci-fi movie or an adventure thing and try to emulate that. When I did the Star Wars thing that couple times, I intentionally created a Yoda character because that's how I would, that one spoke to me. He did, and so that's what you want to emulate. And so trying to find something in your head that you're comfortable with. You don't have to play it perfect or play it to the hilt, but just something that that, look, these are the skills that I want to bring to this event. It may not translate out to how the character sheets come out, but at least you're going to be somewhat familiar with something that you're comfortable with doing. Because the sooner you get comfortable with your character, the easier it's going to be from transferring from role playing, ROLL, to telling a story.
Yeah, that's another thing. And you stole my thunder. Thanks, Ron.
You're welcome.
That bringing an idea, not necessarily, you don't have to know all the classes, you don't have to know all the races. Like Ron said, if you have the type of character that you want to work towards, like say you want to be Gandalf. Now realize on a level 1 character sheet, you're going to be just beginning. You're not going to be anywhere near to the point where you can take on the Balrog. That's not going to happen anytime close, not anytime in the near future. But if you have a basis for the type of character that you want to play in the adventure, then your dungeon master and your fellow players, as long as they're good ones, they'll very easily be able to help you figure out the best way to put that on the character sheet and build towards that in the future.
Yeah. And
sorry guys, I'm dealing with an idiot we have in the chat, so apologize for that, guys. Sorry.
And don't be afraid if you get in the middle of development early on in the process. If you don't like it, try to see what you can do to mold it to what you want. I mean, this is an open-ended world, and yes, there are scenarios, and we certainly did a basic scenario in our YouTube play, but really it can be depending on what you feel, it can be as simple or as complex as you want to play it. It's completely and utterly up to you. If there's a character sheet, there's some rules, but it really is, you get with the right dungeon master, and they're just gonna, is gonna let you roll as long as the group kind of meshes together. It's not, you can't do solo type stuff, but you can be so creative.
So that brings up, this actually down on the list, but this is a good time to bring this up. But it is a very deep and important question, but it's a very simple question. When you think about the impact of it and the answer, that is the essence of D&D. And the simple question is, what is the role of the players? What is their role as players?
Good question.
Yeah.
I think, Chris, in our experience, when you really just kind of threw total strangers together and said, mesh, when ID says, you will find a way to work together. And we did. But I would imagine for most people in their sessions, they would be going with people that they would know to begin with. And and they would know what to some degree, what their friends' strengths are and what their weaknesses are, and kind of mesh it into that and create the story, which is not what we were able to do because we got to know each other quite well at the end. But in the beginning, not only are we trying to figure out the mechanics of the game, we're also trying not to step all over each other.
Yeah.
Oh, you can go from here.
I think possibly a good way to look at the player's role in Dungeons and Dragons. Think of them as an actor on TV or in a movie, and think of their character sheet as their script, not as rigid as a script. I mean, there is some ad-libbing possible, but they have that guideline to go by, and they act along with the script. The player plays the game and tells the story in accordance with what their character sheet is more geared towards doing. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't try anything they don't want to do. In the session we had, I was Hamtag the Odorous, half orc fighter, and I was not a healer at all. But there was one point where someone was making death saving throws, and I was like, okay, we got to do something. I said, let me make a medicine check. And all I had to do was beat a difficulty check of 10. And I was able to do that. And the person was no longer in risk of dying. They were unconscious. They couldn't do anything. But the character sheet is not, it's more of a guideline. It gives you something that you expect your player to be, something that you are aiming for, with the realization that when the time requires it, you can fill any role in the party that needs to be filled.
The acting part is a big deal. I kind of on a lark my senior year of high school. I auditioned for a play and got like the second or third male lead. I was in Harvey, as a matter of fact, if you're familiar with that. It's so much fun.
Yep.
And we sat there and we practiced for 8 weeks. After school every day for 90 minutes to 2 hours, all for 3 shows. We did a Friday night and a Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday, or whatever. And so a lot of that experience I took from being in that play, I found very helpful in trying to develop this character that I was. Because like I said, I didn't know who I was working with. And so you only have success if you work together as a group. And so I think as a player, it's your job to go within the confines of what you created and meld with the people around you, because it's socialization. That's probably the biggest thing. You got to be able to be friendly and cooperate and learn from the people around you.
Yeah, you got to make it believable, not to those who may be watching, because a lot of times face-to-face and internet, nobody's watching. Make it believable to yourselves. Immerse yourself in the story. Immerse yourself in the situations. Yeah. Yep, I agree.
And here's, we didn't rehearse any of this. We haven't got together to talk about any of this stuff. This is just, we're all just ad-libbing. I mean, I got a few questions that I wrote down, but this is just round table, us talking and everything. And I'm asking you these tough questions because I'm having you think about it and having you, as opposed to reading a script, you got to come up with this stuff, live and in person. And they are tough questions.
Which is kind of what we got to do when we're playing D&D anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong answer to any of these questions. Everybody can have their own view. Okay, so I'm not asking these tough questions to try to stump you. Don't think that.
No, not thinking that at all.
No, we're good. Roll with it. Roll with it.
So we've gone over what the role, or what your guys' view of what the role of the players. Now, as players, okay, what do you think the role of the DM is?
He is kind of like a tour guide. Like if you were going on a museum trip or whatever, as we did as a kid, he is the one that knows all the secrets. And I don't want him to be revealing the secrets, but if we have a hard time trying to work something out amongst ourselves, for me, the ideal DM is like, whether you ask the question or not, just to give enough of a crumb for us to figure out what we should take as the next step. I think it was always delightful for me when we threw you for a loop, ID, in a good way. I go back to the dog thing, or something about there was someone in that last night that needed to be fed, or I bribed a waitress or something like that that was beyond there. And so when we had to make you think of what to do next, I think that was good. But I want, a good DM should lead us, but not hold our hand and drag us.
Mhm.
Chris?
Being a DM, that's kind of a tough question to answer from the player's perspective. With IDJ, when he was doing it with us, he was the ringleader. He was the rules adjutant. He was the guy who brought the baddies to the table. He was the person who was building the world, running a module in this case, but still, he was the person who was building the world because he ran it the way he wanted to. The NPCs had his personal flair and his spin on it. A dungeon master, there are people who are like, the dungeon master should be, he should be end all be all. And if the guys are messing around, TPK, they're gone. Total player kill. There are some who are like, the dungeon master should be a rollover and let the players do whatever they want because it's all about the players. It's about everybody playing together. The dungeon master is a player also. Yeah, he's putting a lot of time into it. He's learning, if not all the rules, where to look them up quickly if need be on the fly or afterwards. He also has all these NPCs that he's creating, so he gets to play characters. He's got a lot more to play than you. You got to play one. He's got about 20 or 30 per episode.
Right.
But I really think the biggest role of a dungeon master, as I alluded to earlier, is as a liaison. You as the player, you have in mind what you want your character to do in the story. You tell the dungeon master what your character is doing in the story, and the dungeon master comes up with the rule that best allows you to do that, if it is within the rules of the game, or if it's even within the rule of cool. It may be a little bit out. Like this last Saturday, someone wanted to cast a spell, and it was 10 feet out of range. But it was in the heat of a horse chase, and it came up with quickly. It wasn't, I don't know, am I going to do? He had it in mind what he wanted to do, and I was like, well, you know what? You got the spell off just a little bit ahead, so it had the effect that you wanted it to have. So, I mean, every once in a while, the dungeon master, if it's not going to have that huge an effect, can just keep it going more smoothly, keep it going more cool, keep the fun level up. He's a part of the group. He's human. He's going to make mistakes just like you are. It's just getting together, having fun, moving forward. You're all part of the same team.
All right. So with that said, and we looked at the roles of the players, we looked at the roles of the DM. That kind of brings up kind of the main difference between some of the groups, and that is you can either have the players driving the story forward and the DM reacting to them. So we know Dungeons and Dragons is an action reaction, right? Something happens and then the other side acts, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is, are the players the one that should be doing the action and the DM is reacting to what they're doing? Or is it the other way around where the DM is giving the players the action? This is what's happening to you guys, and the players then react to that.
I think totally depends on the scenario. First few sessions, I had an idea of what was going on just to get started, and the guys went along with it. And then this last session, they took on some bandits. They got the chief. They got him to join them and protect the caravan guy. And another one, they've decided they're going to sell in the next town as a sex slave. So now my guys are joining the slave trade. So that is an instance of they're going to do something, and now I've got to figure out how the world is going to respond to it. Where in the beginning, I was showing them the world, and they were deciding how they were going to respond to it. It really depends on the situation. It could go either way.
I think for me, it would be how well the group gets along together.
Yes.
If you're in a new situation like we were, no, I want my DM to be pointing and giving directions, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But if I find myself in a long-term group where we're dealing with the same characters and we're all building up together, it's much more, look, we've been this, we've done that, we know where we kind of want to do with it. We're in a good sync together. And at that point, the DM should, I don't want to say step out of the way, but I think, a good DM would know, look, this group knows what they're doing. Let's kind of roll along with it. But so I think it comes down to the experience of the group as a whole, how involved the DM should be. Start off intense, and hopefully with the thought that you just become much, less of a hand holder and more of the NPC dude. I guess, for a better word.
I kind of agree with everything you guys said. Obviously, I think it's actually the role of both the DM and the players to actually, as Chris said, there will be moments where the players need to step forward to continue the adventure. The DM has laid out his X, Y, and Z, or A, B, and C. Okay,
Right.
let's go there. The DM has laid out A, B, C. It's now the player's job to go to D, right? If the DM handholds them and takes them to D, then it takes some of the experience away. So as Chris said, I think it's a combination of the dungeon master giving the players the outlines to follow, to go from A to get to B, find out how to get to C, and then have the players then figure out how to get to D, and then the players have to then drive forward from there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Then you're right.
Yay!
I mean, I've played all of 4 times. I mean, so I try my best to answer the questions, but you guys have been on both sides of the coin, and so.
Yeah, but also I've got, and I'm going to tell you, I've got a lot less experience than I may put on. I've really only been doing this Dungeons and Dragons exclusively, a few episodes with IDJ and Dungeon Mastering since April. I'm very, very inexperienced in this, but I've watched a lot of things online. I've read a lot of articles. I've seen a lot of people do it a lot of different ways, and I've taken a little bit here and a little bit there and developed a style, and I'm just very comfortable and confident in doing it. And that probably also comes from my players, from my gaming group. They're friends of mine anyway, and they're supportive, and I'm supporting them, and it's a symbiotic relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
In our circumstance, it is a very symbiotic relationship.
And I think it absolutely has to be a yes, that word.
That word.
Symbiosis. It has to be a symbiosis between the players, feeding off the dungeon master feeding off the players. So if you go back and watch our first couple episodes, we had some issues, right? Because I'm hand holding you, trying to get you to do something, and players' tendency is to let someone else step up and do it.
Somebody feed me the line. I don't know what my line is here. Line. Die, Earth. Line.
I guess the words Dungeons and Dragons must mean show up in the chat and talk shit in the chat. I think that's what Dungeons and Dragons must stand for, because we've had 4 or 5 people so far tonight, whereas Sports Time Machine has been busy just banning people left and right. So I don't know.
Mike.
So a big shout out to Sports Time Machine. Thank you for doing that. We do appreciate it. Looks like he's our only mod in the chat right now, but hopefully we'll get another one of our mods. We do have Bobby in there, but for some reason, Bobby's afraid to use her damn wrench. So I'm gonna have her practice next time Clinton shows up.
Ha!
All right, so yeah, I think it has to be a symbiosis between the players and the dungeon master and the players with one another. I've been in many groups. At one point I had 5 online groups running at the same time. If you go back way back a couple years ago on my YouTube channel, and I was hosting them live. And every one of those groups fell apart because players couldn't get along with other players, and that was what ended up killing. I think every one of the groups was it just got to the point where it's like, well, I'm not going to waste my time because this group doesn't listen to what I have to say, or this guy wants to be the hero every time and step up, and my character doesn't get to do anything, and there's always this. So having players that get along with one another, respect one another, and want to play as a unified team, whether that's good or bad. If I let if I'm playing and I let Chris's character die, it shouldn't have any effect on my and his relationship. We should just act the same way. And even though, Chris has got to make a new character now, he's got a new backstory or whatever, blah blah blah. But if it happened in the moment, and for whatever reason, there shouldn't be any of this personal interaction between us, hatred or whatever, because of what had happened. Because I mean, we're all there to have a good time and play. And if a character dies, which is unfortunate, which you guys experienced,
Yeah.
but
Well,
if we would
I
have,
didn't experience it, but others did.
yes, your character didn't. Well, I mean, that was a great experience for our group because I would have loved to have another session because then we get to figure out how your character moves on without those other characters and
Right.
picks up new friends and finds
Yeah.
new people to hang out with, and then having the new players having to introduce new characters and stuff would have been it's kind of a growing pain as a player.
Yes.
Could still be done though.
Yeah.
Could still be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just think it would be, as you've described, just a major challenge to try to meld people who don't know each other into a working group.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Chris hit it on the head. He knows all the people that are in the group that he's DMing. I'm assuming that you knew them from the start.
Yes.
And
for years before that.
Right. So, he knew what kind of worked and what didn't work, and it made it easy to go along with, as opposed to doing the old MTV, the real world thing. We're going to stick 15 people in a room together and see how long people keep their clothes. I mean, see how long the people can get along together. And sometimes, as you know, that just doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best thing you can do is what you guys experienced, because you all came in with such great attitudes that I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to have a lot of fun. I'm going to make it fun for everybody else. And the guys that we got, and even the ones that had to come and go, were such a integral part of trying to make everyone. And nobody had known one another. I mean, you had known Chris and Chris had known you, but you weren't like best of friends for 20 years or anything like that. I mean, you guys had a little bit of
known you guys for about a month. It
right.
wasn't even a long-term thing,
Right.
But yeah.
But it all went down to what your attitude and vision was for the game. The players coming in with I'm going to go in and have fun and just have a good time with these people I don't even know. And, I've only got about 4 or 5 sessions, so I'm going to make the best of it.
Try to be quite blunt, ID. I didn't want to fuck up. first couple times out. It wasn't about having fun. It was about not making an ass out of myself in front of other people.
So With we're kind of going over these broad topics now. We're talking about what's the roles of the players, what's the roles of the DMs, who leads the group? Is it the DM leading the players? Is it the players leading the DMs? What we're talking about how the players should get along or shouldn't get along, or their views. Everyone's got their own views, right?
Tension is healthy. I think if you have everyone that's in agreement all the time, it doesn't, just like a general book, it doesn't tell a good story.
My next question was what should be the interactions between players? So Ron, go ahead, go for it. What should be, and the word I want to focus in on, what should be the interactions between the players?
I think it's important to be cordial, but not all, Three Musketeers, one for all and all for one. At least at the start, you may build to that depending on your shared experiences. But I think that it's important, if you're going to tell a realistic story, that not everyone is going to be on the same page. Or if someone does try to be the hero, that there might be some reason within the game story. I'm not talking about personal feelings towards each other, but to build some sort of natural tension between the players, because my goal may not be the same as Chris's, and if you weren't the DM, it may not be the same as yours. But I think a lot of that comes down to, in building, you get a lot of that when you build the characters. Is there a rivalry between, let's say, me and Chris as characters? We know that we kind of have to coexist in order to achieve our thing, but we might not see everything eye to eye, and I think that just makes for better storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Chris?
Good players should not hog the spotlight. If nobody else in the group is doing anything at the moment, maybe there's a doldrum, maybe there's just a general distraction or something. Good players should not drag them along by the nose. Good players should be like, well, what do you think we should do, so-and-so? And in role-playing, slap him in the back and get him to interact. A good player should someone perhaps that doesn't have much experience realize what a good example is and rise to the level of play of some of those at the table. As you get more comfortable with it, a good player should take a little more upon himself, begin to do more, begin to be more of a part of the party and more a part of the story as he becomes comfortable enough to do it. A good player should not be combative at the table with other players. If something doesn't go quite your way, you need to really be able to find it within yourself to stifle it. And if it's something that really needs to be discussed, don't do it in session. Do it after the game. Same with rules. If a rule doesn't go quite your way and you know what the rule is, don't be a rules lawyer. Let it go. And because no one's going to remember every single rule, players included. A good player is thoughtful of the other players at the table and also of the DM, and the interactions that they should have should be positive. They should be not to the point of totally sacrificing anything they want to do, because like Ron said, everyone comes to the table with expectations and things that they want to get out of the game. But they should take into account that they're not the only person there and that the story is not for them, and that they really need to include the other players and allow the other players to include them. It's a social game, and as a social game, you're going to have social interactions in character, but also with the other players at the table. And it's tough if you've got a group. If you're fortunate to have a group like I've got where we've gotten along, we're going to get along great. Every once in a while, someone's going to pull a wang rod and move, and it might throw the mood at the table for a little while. And I'm like, that's a great time for a break. Let's go outside and burn a butt real quick. And we come back to the table. If anything needed to be hashed out, it was, and we get back to it and we keep on playing. If there are other dynamics where you're going to have a group of players at a table that there's one or two that are the power players that are going to want everything to go their way. There's one or two that are going to be the murder hobos. Well, I don't care about the story. I'm going to go kill this guy because, you know, the sword fits his shoulder very well. It's a very social game. It's a very social situation, and the interactions ideally would be good between the players.
Yes. You know, I'm going to give you a story, and it's going to take me a minute to go through that. And I agree with everything Chris said, but we're trying to, you know, I don't want to paint this like everyone's got to be, oh, kumbaya, we're all going to get along, we're going to have a good time. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So I was actually a player at one point many, many years ago. And my character was it was a she, and she couldn't shut her mouth up when you know how some women, they just say things without thinking, right? That was my character, right? So she would say the worst things at the worst time, right? So our party was traveling down the road. We came across what looked like a merchant caravan headed out of town. Everyone was murdered. You know, we did the whole investigative type thing, a bunch of dead bodies, blah, blah, blah. The DMS is what we wanted to do. So we didn't know there was a town there, right? We just knew that we came across these guys. So we didn't want them turning into zombies or ghouls or whatever. So we burned all the bodies or whatever. And then we kept traveling down the road. And then, like, you know, later on in the day, we come to this town. And so, and we had a bunch of supplies that we got from the caravan that we came across. You guys probably know where this is going, don't you? And so, so we got to the town, and we're like, oh, well, let's get some supplies, blah blah blah. So the DM is asking us, what are we doing, what we're, where we're going or whatever. And I go to buy some supplies. I think it was a paladin, but I also had like a bow and stuff. And so I'm like, well, I picked up all these arrows. I'm going to go sell the arrows. So I go to sell the arrows to the merchant there. He's like, hey, I just sold these. These have got my mark on them. Where'd you get these arrows? And so I'm like, oh yeah, well, there was a merchant caravan up the way. And he's like, oh my God, that just left our town like a couple hours ago. What happened to all the people or whatever? So there's a whole bunch of people in the shop and everything. So my character gets up on top of a barrel and says, ladies and gentlemen, and the other players are all like, oh, good, he's going to explain the situation, and we won't have to deal with it. Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? I just want you to know that all of your loved ones are dead. We have set them afire up the road, and now, yeah, they're all dead. And I just want you to know that, because I don't want people asking me questions where I got the arrows, where I got the swords. That's what happened. Get down off the barrel. The other players in my groups, their eyes like, boring. Oh my God, what are you doing? Oh my God.
There's one in every crowd.
There's one in every crowd.
That's funny.
But it all depends on your group and your players. I had gone before, we were all friends, we were all, buddies. And so, we're like, well, we're making characters, and I'm like, I'm going to make this character. And occasionally she's going to just say things that, she shouldn't be saying and telling, and I'm like, is that going to be a problem with anybody in the group? Okay. She's not going to be doing it all the time, but it'll probably be at the worst situations. And everybody was like, no, that's cool. That's fine. It's no problem or whatever. So everyone knew that this was, going to happen, right? Eventually, but it wasn't like a constant thing. But it was, I went to the other players and I said, this is what my character does. Occasionally, not all the time. I'm not going to ruin the group because I do this all the time or anything like that. They're like, as long as you don't do it all the time, we don't have any problem with it. Yeah. And it made for like the most memorable moment, because we had people in the town that ended up hanging themselves because their loved one was killed, and so they didn't have any reason to live. you know, blah blah blah. So as repentance, right? Because we felt bad. Well, the other characters felt bad. My character didn't feel bad, but we got all these other quests. So it doesn't necessarily, you know, players interacting with other players should be in the spirit and fun, or the spirit of having fun with one another in the game. Okay, it's there's a fine line in that, because I've had, like I said, lots of groups have been destroyed by people that have not gotten along with other players, you know. And I've had groups where like, you dude, you need to kick this guy out or I'm leaving, you know, and then it's his decision on the DM. Do I kick out player A or player B? Well, one way or the other, somebody's leaving, you know. So if you can go in with the mindset of, I'm going to have a good time, and it doesn't necessarily have to be good. As I've told my players and probably told you guys, the most memorable things that you will ever remember are the bad things that happen.
Yep.
Right? You will not remember all the good things that happened. Not once will you ever remember the good things that happened. It's all about the bad things that the characters go and experience. And if you don't experience these bad, horrible things,
Depending on the group, I beg to differ. The Ballad of Quillison Honeysnake.
Oh, that's true.
Depending on the group. Because if you've got a group that is finally melded and is really getting along, or that has known each other and they play well together, depending on the group, and not to paint the picture for Dungeons and Dragons, but if you've got the group you belong in, you will remember the good things. You've just got to stick to it long enough to get to where you have that group. Yes, there are a lot of bad groups out there. Yes. But there's a good group out there for you. You just got to stick in there and find.
Not going to disagree with that at all.
Yep. I think is, if playing Dungeons and Dragons is about experiencing the events that unfold, whether they're good or bad or horrible or terrific or whatever it is, experiences and dealing with it, whether it's a good event or a bad event, and trying to find the trying to complete the story, whether it ends up a good story or a bad story, is all up to both the DM and the players.
Yeah.
What is your favorite like and dislike of Dungeons and Dragons?
I haven't come up on anything that I dislike about it yet. Again, very relatively inexperienced with it, and everything with it so far has been positive. I haven't come up with anything that I dislike about it to this point. Things that I really like about Dungeons and Dragons. 5th edition, everybody's like, oh, it's not like it used to be. You get an extra D6 for your character abilities and this and that. Wizards of the Coast really streamlined it to bring it more in line for the way that a lot more modern RPGs are played. It's very similar in mechanics to Star Wars Saga, which I've played, a couple of others. Worlds of Warcraft, there's a lot more similarity to it. I played a couple of sessions of 3.5, and though I didn't get familiar and learn all the rules, I was able to tell there is a huge difference between what it was and what it is now. And it's a great game system, and I really enjoy it. I have not come up with anything yet. I've not encountered anything that I dislike about it yet.
As I'm just going to go with what I liked. I love the ability to be able to create on the fly. You're given some stipulations. You as you said, ID, you have the basic script of your character sheet. What you choose to do with that character is completely up to you. And that part I liked a great deal. As someone who's done some writing, and as someone who does content creation and kind of does the same thing, except for with home runs and touchdowns, as opposed to healing potions and that. You know, you were able to create within reason the world that you wanted for yourself. I guess the dislikes are that it's so complex that I just barely scratched the surface. And there's kind of that back in the head of, look, there's this 400-page rule book that you should go out and buy and kind of get familiar with, just so you can become a better player. I mean, just trying to be, I guess maybe the intimidation fact of coming in cold to start. Not that I felt intimidated by you guys, but the fact that, look, we show that stack of books again. You got to speak because I'm going to talk over it. How can you not be intimidated when, okay, here's your reading material, and please go watch 5 hours of videos on how to play this? I mean, that's, I've done games with steep learning curves. EVE Online, I think we've talked about this before. I mean, the learning curve on that is a steep hill, and there is no one to hold your hand. You're going to get blapped, and you're going to get your money stolen, and whatever. So I guess the dislike for me is the fact that it maybe is not the most user-friendly thing in the world, but again, as you go through it, I could see where you learn it.
Yeah.
Yep. So obviously, when I look at Dungeons and Dragons, my favorite thing is the storytelling part. Not only the dungeon master, but both the players as well. Having the story unfold as the dungeon master, I get to see how the players react to the situations and how they progress and what their views are of their characters. That's kind of what I like most about it. Speaking of rule books and dislikes, the one thing that I dislike is having to rely on rules for a somewhat imaginary game. Because we're basically playing an imaginary game. There has to be a set of rules, obviously, or it's going to be like, all right, I swing my sword and I chop the enemy in half, right? So if I'm imagining it, that's what happened. So there's rules, there's regulations and stuff. What I guess I don't like is the reliance on too many rules to try and. I understand there has to be rules, but to try and simulate a kind of an imaginary game and the abundance of rules that we just saw.
Yeah. But that's the thing about this. I mean, with all of these books, that's the kind of the game that the dungeon master can set. I mean, you have the type that is going to be like, yeah, we'll do the rules a little bit whenever we want, whenever it suits us. Or you have the dungeon master that is like, oh no, this book, I mean, that's the gospel of Luke right there, and we're going by it. It's really a good balance. I mean, there have been some times in my sessions where it's like, I know what the rule is. I'm going to bend it a little bit because it fits the narrative and it's totally cool. That's one thing that I really think that I like the most about Dungeons and Dragons is that even though you have the rules to refer to, they don't necessarily need to be held up as long as you're consistent. As long as you're not making an exception for a player and then this becomes your favorite player or anything. I mean, if you get to a certain situation and you're like, you know what, the story demands that even though the rules say he can't do it or the role he made won't let him do it, the story demands that this happens right now. And you have the freedom in order to be able to create that part of the story in spite of the rules sometimes.
It's important in an open-ended game that you have to know how to move it along. Yep. And it's whatever going to help the DM do that. I understand why they have a rules. I mean, in my other world of sports simulations, things have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and all the rules inside out, and kind of can go through that. But in this type of situation where you can, where it's very loose and stuff, you got to have something to say, as you said, ID. Yeah, in our head we swung on and chopped that guy to bits, but oh no, we rolled a 1. He got back up and clubbed me back in the head. I mean, if you don't have that sort of interaction back, then it's then everything's a fairy tale, and I don't think people would play if there's no conflict.
The half-orc fighter is going to scale the cliff face. He rolled a 1. he falls and lands on his hoo-haws.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's it.
Embrace the ones. I mean, if you roll a 1, embrace that sucker and make it your own and make the story even that much more memorable.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The other part is being as a DM. And I know Ron hasn't done any DMing, but Chris has done some. But the other part that I kind of don't like about Dungeons and Dragons is the player death. Okay. I don't like killing off a player, but it's part of the game because for me personally, as a DM, you have to give this risk versus reward, right? You can't just give out rewards if there's no risk, because then the players know that they don't have to fear anything, right? So there's got to be this kind of balance between you give the players a risk, you give them a reward. And obviously with risks, the players fail, they can end up dying like we did in our adventure. I don't like killing off players is what I don't like, but I think it has to be part of the game because of the risk reward situation. If you had if the party was magically, oh yay, guess what? You're all back together again because Ron dragged out every one of your bodies out of the underground temple there,
Mm-hmm.
and had paid the clerics to heal you guys, and you're all back together and all kumbaya, everyone's happy. It just doesn't make for a good adventure. It doesn't make for a good time for me as a DM because the players don't fear anything. Oh, I'm just going to charge down the hallway because DM's not going to kill me, so it doesn't matter what I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I hate the loss that players sometimes feel when their character does die. It's like, oh, and then I feel bad because it's like, oh man, now your character died and I'm sorry, and I didn't, mean for that to happen. So it's got to be part of Dungeons and Dragons. I mean,
It's not a risk averse game. The whole point of it is to challenge yourself to do things that you wouldn't necessarily do, because there's a goal that's got to be reached, and it's not like Monopoly where you're doing and landing on Boardwalk and Park Place.
Right.
All of my guys, they have a second character ready to go that they're really looking forward to being able to play. And initially, I was like, I really hope this isn't, man, I did the wrong character, so I'm going to go out there and try to get this one killed so that way I can get to the second character sheet. And the more I find that we go into it, it's something else that they want to do and they just have something ready. But so far, the adventure is so fun that these guys are jumping into it. They're learning their characters. They're learning the system because Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is new to them. And I've seen a few videos talking about player death. And one thought that really comes to mind is, sometimes it may, and it probably will happen. Like if there's a moment where a dying breath, if they can say something to their companions, allow them to say it. The player is probably going to be very frustrated that it happened. As Dungeon Master, you're probably going to be very frustrated that it happened. I mean, you've made this world, you've made this story, they've made this character, they've told this story, and now all of a sudden it's over. Give them a chance to say something imparting to their company. And when it's over, allow the party to celebrate the life of their fallen comrade. Go back to the tavern, get dead ass drunk, toasting the guy who just fell, and allow the player to step away, whatever. And maybe when the session's done, he's like, okay, I want to roll this new character up. Come on, let's go.
Yeah,
and hopefully it'll be a positive effect like that, hopefully.
I can't imagine. I knew that we were doing the short session of that. And so the deaths of all of my compatriots in there really didn't mean much of anything because it was the last one anyway. They weren't going to continue.
And you know why that happened? I'm metagamed. Metagaming is where you take player knowledge. I know this about my character. I know that I have high strength, so I'm going to do it. That's right, metagaming. And you put that into your character, and your character does it because you know it. Well, just because you know it doesn't mean your character does. And you can't take that knowledge. You have to be able to golden rule. You have to be able to divorce yourself of that knowledge with your character in game. I metagame. I knew it was our last session. I knew it was 2 hours. I knew we were only about 30 minutes away from the end of it. And I saw, and he said the priest was in that other room. And I knew that we needed to move the story forward quickly, and I charged into that room on the attack.
No, and for me, but I can't imagine, assuming that I ever do get into a long-term group, that 6 months, 9 months, a year into playing whatever character I designed, that character is no longer there. And whether it was through my fault or other circumstances or bad dice roll, the fact that I'd spent all this time trying to create and develop whoever it was I wanted to be in there, I could see where that would be frustrating for the DM, because that would just be, I know anytime I finish a project on my channel, I kind of feel a sense of loss that this is done. And I can delete it and do it again, but it's not going to be the same. And so, I can see where you're coming from in that, because if I've spent all that time in there and I get nailed by a rock in the head and I can't be saved, like, oh, really? That's not how I wanted to end. So.
Yeah, now imagine this situation, and this is what I had done to one of my player groups, was they spent probably a good 6 months of real life time going through these massive adventure to try and save a captain to one of the towns, like a guard captain. Happened to be one of the brothers of one of the players that was a guard captain. He found out his brother got captured. They went and found the location he was supposed to be at. They had moved him, so they had to go get him again. They finally ended up, after 6 months, going to get him, and they rescued him. And they went to on the outskirts of this kingdom. They have like these guard towers scattered every couple 100 miles, and the closest place to take him was, because he was in bad shape, was to one of the guard towers. And the enemies decided that because of the way they did things during their adventure and blah blah blah, the enemies were coming and surrounded the tower. And so they were in the tower with the guard captain after spending all this time trying to capture. And the enemies gave them an ultimatum: either send out the head of the captain, or we will kill you all. And the players, that's where we stopped the session, because I'm like, well, I got to give you guys time to think about what you want to do and blah blah blah, and kind of put them in that situation. So if I was to put you guys in that situation, the one I just talked about, what would you guys, you can talk back and forth and whatever, but basically you got a massive horde wanting to, the reason the enemies wanted him was because, from their perspective, you end up finding out through this adventure that he was having an affair with one of the wives of one of the monsters' wives. He was having an affair with the orc wife, and they ended up having a child. He didn't want anybody to find out about this, so he ended up killing the lady.
Interesting.
I'm sorry?
Interesting.
And so the tribe leader has vowed vengeance against him because he found out that this had happened. And so the party rescued him just in time, because it was a different orc tribe that ended up capturing the guy, and they negotiated with the other guy, and that's when they intercepted him before the other guy found out. So when the orc captain went to the first tribe and said, "All right, I'm here for my prize," they're like, "Well, he escaped, and this is where he's at. Go get him." And so they sent the guy over there because they knew where they were going. So now you have this new guy there, and he says, "Hey, this is what happened. Which, well, they had found out. He says, I'm not here to kill you guys. I'm not here to start a war. I just want him dead.
So talking about sacrificing your character in essence?
No, it's not your character.
Oh,
It
okay.
would be an NPC that you spend 6 months trying to find, and it would be one of your
Oh,
brothers.
so you try. Okay. Oh, man. I
Hmm.
mean, that's the great thing about Dungeons and Dragons is all the twists and turns, and then in having to make decisions that are kind of dirty. It's not all. And that's not all clean cut. And
So this is your brother, Ron. Let's play it out.
okay.
I do not want to perish at the hands of these orcs. I will remove his head.
That's my brother, man. We grew up together. I know he did bad things, but I mean, how many people will die if this doesn't happen?
Us?
Well, I mean, not only you guys, right? But there's between like 8 and 12 other guards that were in this outpost when you guys showed up. So it's not just you guys. It's all these other people that are here as well. See, I like to put these tough situations in there.
I
If it was just you guys, I know what you do, but now it's like, wait a minute, because I've got to.
I
cannot allow the deaths of those that are in here with us, you included. I cannot allow that to happen.
I understand. I understand. Is there any way you think we can beat them?
I think trying to fight them in this circumstance is hopeless, and we don't have a way to improve our situation. And time is very short.
And just to throw another wrench, as you guys are discussing it,
Son of a bitch!
your brother wakes up from his severe injuries and claims that he did not do what he's being accused of. Because you're like, how could you do this? How could you do this? He's like, I didn't
Seriously? Seriously?
Yeah.
He's an orc. What were you thinking? What were you thinking?
I didn't do it. Not me.
But
he's got the wrong guy.
I've
He's got
seen
the wrong guy.
child. It looks like you.
It wasn't me.
Greener.
So what are we supposed to do with this horde of people who are going to kill us?
And then he passes out from his blood loss.
I understand that our situation is where it's him or us, and I pull out my sword and I chop.
Ooh.
Here,
Ooh.
you wanted it so bad.
Ooh.
Here's your head. Throw it out the window, and you can do what you want with it.
Okay. After you throw out the head of out the window, they all attack. Anyways, so you've now killed your brother for no reason. To be chicken in, dude. All right, so that's just
no, but that's exactly the strength of the game is that you don't know what's coming, and maybe you take solace in the fact that you spared him more suffering in the final moments than getting hacked to death by a bunch of crazed things.
Or perhaps they would have seen standing up for someone who is weaker than you as a honorable thing to do and would have taken that into account. Never know.
Well,
you never know.
You want to know what the real party did? You want to know what the real party did?
I have 3 sisters, so I could sell them down the river at any point.
What did the real party do?
They ended up not killing them, and they decided that they were going to find a way to defend. So we've actually had like 3 sessions of onslaught after onslaught after onslaught. Yeah. And it came down to they were like thinning the herd.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the enemy sent in like a group, and they ended up killing them. And then we had another session, the enemy sent in a group, and they ended up barely killing them. So they were really weak because now they don't have very many spells left and everything.
Yeah.
And so the third attack is ready to come in. And so they finally, one of the characters is a druid, and he's like, you know, if worse comes to worse, I'll just change into a bird. I'll grab one of you if there's just two of us left. I'll change into like a giant bird. I'll grab you, and then we'll fly out of here. And whoever's dead, we just leave them behind, and we're going. So that was their game plan, right? And so they ended up. It was like one of those tall, you know, spiral towers that they had to. And so they were defending as they were going towards the top. And they get up to the very top, and they're like really wounded, and it looks like it's bad. That they got, you know, still enemies coming up after them and everything. And so the enemy unleashed these huge gorillas to climb on the outside of the towers, just like, say, King Kong or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two of them. And so I say to the players, okay, they're like, well, it'll take them a while to get through there. I said, well, it's kind of an old tower. You know, it's been run down. It hasn't had, you know, it's been years and years out here in the middle of nowhere. It might, you know, it might be really sturdy. It might not. I'm going to go ahead and I'll tell you what, I'm going to have, I'm going to have you guys roll. You could decide, roll a 20-sided dice, and we'll say whatever you roll, that's how much damage each 5x5 section has to take before it crumbles. And you know what happened? They rolled a 1.
Yeah.
So literally, the enemy just smashed, the roofs collapsing on them, and that was it. They all ended up dying. TPK.
Oh man.
It was good. It was a good time, though. It was a good time. And yeah, you're right. That's one of the strengths is hopefully you get into a situation where you have to make tough decisions on what your character wants to do, how they do it, and why they do it.
I mean, you know, obviously I just did that on the fly, but you know, given the choice, you know, how well did I get? Okay, there's blood there. How well did I get along with him? Do I believe the story? You know, I mean, there's all sorts of different variables there that you kind of have to think about, and you have to think about it in a hurry.
And once you've been involved in it up to that point, A, you're going to think more like a team and more like a group of characters, and B, you will have been in this a whole lot longer and have a better idea of how your character might act, kind of thing. And that's a beautiful thing about Dungeons and Dragons as well, as the longer that you have a character and the longer you build it, the more you can explore it, the more you can find out how they would react given a certain situation. And you can continue to build the character knowing those morals.
Absolutely.
Yep. I think the biggest problem, as Chris had already mentioned, is the metagaming. The metagaming and doing, like, Chris, if I was to ask you this situation, let's say we were playing that situation I just gave you guys a minute ago, and it was you and your actual brother, right, in the same situation, it's totally different than your imaginary character and his brother, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. When I'm talking about, you know, my brother, really, like me and my brother, or imaginary character and my brother, and having to separate people, I find are a lot more. People are a lot more with role playing games. They're a lot more abrasive, more willing to sacrifice, more willing to
can more easily
do
detach themselves.
Yeah, because I'll just get another character if my character dies.
Right.
You know, I'll just sacrifice for the group and I'll get a new character. You know, it's no big deal. You know, my guys.
If you can sink yourself into it, like you just said, and if I can imagine if it was Ron that they wanted his head, my character would probably be something akin to, you know what, if he needs correcting, I'm going to be the one to whoop his ass, not anybody else. And I may have made a decision like that and say, no, you can't have it. Yep.
And I think that's pretty much I had some really good players, and I think that's pretty much what was decided was, hey, if you're going to try and kill my brother, you got to come through me,
Right.
And Ron was so quick with the sword, it was
Yeah, he
unbelievable.
was.
Wow, I'm telling
Bastard.
you. Wow, that was pretty quick. We know how well we stand with Ron. They'll just throw it to the wolves in a
That's right.
Chaos, baby. Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
I love it. I love it.
But that's if you have a good party. I mean, that situation, if you don't have a good party, you got some players going, oh, let's kill them. Other players going, no, let's not kill them. Then they have infighting, and then your
Yeah,
party.
I think it depends on the dynamic of the situation and all that. How you would play that. I mean, just in the 30 seconds I had to think about it. You did what? And in my mind, I thought he was going to die anyway. From the
Which he ended up doing. The brother ends up dying from his wounds anyways. So.
Right, and so.
But the players don't know that until after they make their decision. So they're damned if they do, damned if they don't.
Yeah.
And again, that's the beauty of the game is that you're not there. There is no white hat. There is no black hat. We're all walking around in gray clothing. We do good things and we do things that we would not want to admit to other people.
Yep.
So what that brings up a great question then. What makes for players, what makes a great campaign? What if you were to say, oh, this would be my perfect, adventure, if this, this kind of, is it a high stakes war between kingdoms that you gotta, is kind of mediate and keep that away, or would your perfect adventure be, you got to infiltrate another kingdom, get all the dirt on them so your kingdom can take them over? Is it something like World War III out there where everybody's going after everyone and it's like last man standing is going to be in charge? What for you guys would be like a really good adventure for you guys? I mean, everyone's different. I mean, there's millions and millions of different situations. Is it just something as simple as ending up alive at the end? Is that as long as my character ends up going through you know 20 adventures or whatever, and then he retires, boom, he's just done, he's had enough. And in Gloomhaven, that's part of the game. I don't know if you know that, Chris, is some of your characters will complete their goals and they'll end up leaving, right? So you'll have characters coming in and out of your Gloomhaven thing. So is your goal, complete my quest, my character's quest to become X, Y, or Z, and then I'm done? Or is your main goal to help the most amount of people out there would be the best thing, or stop a war, or something as simple as, keeping my family alive, or is it becoming the most powerful cleric in the land? I mean, what would be, there's a broad, like I said, a broad range. Do you have any ideas what you would be like, wow, that would be really, really cool to be part of?
My ideal end goal is not as a character, it's as a player. In anything that I do, probably the way I like to play best is I try to really get to the point where I can emotionally invest myself in the game and where that comes out in the character. And sometimes that's a tough thing to do, but if you hit the character just right, we have another post-zombie apocalyptic game that we're playing that the guys are making, and we're working on it. And I have this character, and she is coming to grips with she had to kill her own father. There's a guy in the group that's just into the compound. She's kind of taking a liking to him. his girlfriend has been found, and he sees him with her, and now she's like, why do I trust people? And being able to explore a character like that for me, and really be able to try to bring that to the table in the role playing, testing myself that way. That's the thing that I like most out of role playing, the way that it has developed with me over the past months and past years. As far as a dungeon master, I mean, I don't have a character or a game scenario that I like the most. I want, with my gaming group, perfect example, if and when we play this to level 20, when we get done, I want this to be something that we will remember and cherish for the rest of our lives. I don't really have favorite character goals, but as a player, I just want it to be the best time.
All right, Ron. I know you're kind of newer, but
yeah. I want to take a character and grow with that character. I want to take one, a long-term career type character. I want that character to be challenged and have to make decisions that they don't feel comfortable with doing, and realize that there are consequences. I talked about it a couple minutes ago. I don't want to play a white hat. I don't want to play a black hat, but I want to be able to do and to explore and to make mistakes and live with the consequences of my actions. Whether it's something that I would have thought that maybe 4 or 5 sessions before I would never do that. And I don't want it to be reflective of my own personality. I mean, you don't want to go into a role-playing game and play yourself. That's to me doesn't sound much fun. But to take a character to the limits of what they can do and live with themselves in the morning. And so if I'm character A for this length of time, and then when it's time to retire the character, if the character doesn't get killed off, then do that and then do something else. But get good with the game. I know that I found myself the last couple times I couldn't wait to get to Thursday to find out what we were going to do again. And so to me, that was the best part of the experience is, okay, here's my character. How do I develop it? How do I grow with it? And how do I interact with that and achieve whatever it is the goal of the session is? So as far as, specific, do I want to be, prevent wars, fight wars, do my own little platoon thing? I'm not sure I know the answer to that yet. But, taking and going on with experience and then taking that character to where I think it should go. And if it means being diplomat or Matahari or whatever, then that. But I guess I haven't played enough to know what my ideal would be in that sense, except for just growing, having my experience grow with my character's experience.
Good answer. Real good answers, both of you. All right, so if I was to say we're going to be quitting here in just a few minutes, guys, and I appreciate everyone stopping by. Al, Red Sox fan. James, how you doing tonight? Bobby Catalano, OTDA.
What's going on, guys?
Hey, guys.
Clinton Parks, OTDA, Bobby, Sports Time Machine, and Bobby have been busy kicking people out all night, so thank you to them. So if we were going to say, hey, we're going to start a D&D campaign, and we have viewers out there that may be interested in joining you two and joining the group or try things out, what would you tell them? What would you say to them to motivate them to come join us?
It's worth the risk to try, even if you have never done this type of gaming before. They were very accepting of me when I came on and tried to learn a character that was not mine and try to make it my own. It's not you can. It's not that difficult. Once you get over the mechanics of how the game works, understanding your role within whatever the role within the group, it will come together and it will click. And there'll be that one aha moment. It won't be the same aha moment for everybody, but there'll be that one aha moment when you don't see Ron and Chris and ID, but Dungeon Master and characters, and you'll be able to talk with that character to make that decision to progress the story forward, and not, Ron, what do you think we should do here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, you're stuck in the bunker, play your 7-iron, get out. No, I mean, you'll know the situation, you'll feel comfortable in the situation of what you're facing, and you'll be able to address me as whoever I am instead of Ron or Retro. And that's when it will click, and you'll understand the magic that comes with any role-playing game. You can become that character. It's not that difficult.
If somebody wanted to join us, I would say you don't have to know the rules. You don't have to know how to play. If you have an idea of the kind of character you want to play, like say you wanted to play Dr. Richard Kimball from The Fugitive, someone who is smart, someone who is able to think his way through problems, we can build a character that can do that and just come and have fun. You can't do it wrong. You might be able to do it differently, which can make it very interesting, but you can't do it wrong. Come on and have fun, and we'll show you how to do it. And if you want to, send an email to idjesterlive@gmail.com. Right there, everybody. idjesterlive@gmail.com. Send an email, and we'll get something started. And I look forward to anybody who might want to join us. And it'd be fantastic. What fun.
Ron, give me a quirk that is your character. If you're going to make a new character, what quirk would you give him?
Oh God. He'd be a bit full of himself.
Be a bit full of himself.
I
Chris,
think,
your character, what's your strength?
My strength would be my conviction.
Your conviction.
And one little fault I might have is that I'm might stammer my M's.
You might stammer my M's. Ron, your character's history. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up with some privilege. Was well educated in the way of wizardry. Didn't have a lot of friends, but didn't need them.
What's your Chris? What's your what do they call it?
Backstory.
Yeah, thank you.
I was made to kill my parents with fire.
You what?
I was made to kill my parents with fire.
You were made to kill your. All right. So now
Wow.
you've got
That's
just
dark.
a few questions. You can now start thinking about a character, and it's as simple as that. Now all you have to do is start converting what you're thinking about down into a character sheet, and before you know it, what character class are you, Chris?
I think I'll be a wizard.
Ron, what's your character?
I was gonna be a wizard.
Oh, we
Why
got two
not?
wizards then.
Yep.
What race are you, Ron?
I don't remember off the top of my head. Half dwarf? Is that a race?
No.
Dwarf
No.
is.
Dwarf.
Dwarves,
Dwarf.
halflings,
Well,
elves,
half dwarf.
dwarf.
I'm
Dwarf
only 5
wizard.
feet under. Dwarf with hey. Yeah.
Chris,
Be-
what race are you?
I'd be a human.
All right.
Yep.
So you have your basic outline already. All you have to do, if you were gonna, if you were going to tell me your character stats, what would be your character stats?
I can't fight to save my life. I'm not as smart as I think I am. But when I am, but I have enough knowledge that I can throw a good spell and I can heal. But it's all gotten to my head.
You got heal spells as a wizard. Boy, you are really good. Maybe his spells he thinks he's casting he thinks they're magic, but they're not really magic.
Yeah, like I said, throw me off this late. I mean, yeah, just the overall pompous. I know I can do this, and I know jack crap, essentially.
Really, I mean, to start thinking about a character, you just need to come up with a few things about him. Just as we ask these questions to Chris and Ron, just say to yourself, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What am I good at? What am I bad at? What's my history like? What's my background?
And a one sentence history. You don't have to go into it. You can
yeah.
flesh out the history as you play the character. Just come up with 1 or 2 sentences to basically describe major points in your backstory.
Exactly.
I mean, go back to the example of Chris when he was asked, tell me your backstory, and he came up with, I was forced to kill my parents.
Well, there's a lot to learn about that, then, isn't there?
Right. I mean, just with that one sentence alone, that said a ton about the type of experience that you would have trying to deal with him and the demons that he probably is dealing with inside for having to kill his parents.
And I'm already looking forward to emotionally vesting in this character already. Having not even rolled a single D6 to figure out my stats, I am already looking forward to this character.
So, Ron, how do you know Chris?
How would I know Chris?
Yeah, how would your character know his character?
Well, it got around the kingdom that here is this kind of mere slow dude was killed his parents, and so everyone knew about that. It's the stuff we talked about in the tavern. So I know of him, but I've never met him before.
Oh, all right. There you go. And that's the start of a party. If you want to join, Chris has sent you my email address. Let me know, and we'll see if we can set something up.
IDJesterlive@gmail.com, everybody. Send an email, and we'll set something up.
All right. Well, one way or the other, I think we'll get together and talk Dungeons and Dragons again sometime. Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know it was All-Star Game, so I don't know if it's still going on. So I'm going to just, end the chat now, and we can all catch up on the highlights and watch the end of the game. That would be fine. But I appreciate everyone coming out, and I appreciate Sports Time Machine, Bobby Catalano, especially tonight. They did a great job. We didn't have very many mods, and we had literally, I know you guys didn't have your chat up, we had 6 to 8 people at one point in the chat just spamming things.
Wow.
So it was a really bad chat
Good job,
time,
guys.
and they did a good job. Yeah,
Good job.
so thanks to them for that. So about Al and Quentin and James and everyone, I want to appreciate you guys for coming out as well.
Yeah, thanks for coming out, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And if you are interested, just to give it a try, a whirl, like Chris said, send me an email. We'll get together. We'll show you how to operate everything. We'll have a couple test sessions offline.
At IDJesterlive@gmail.com.
There you go. And until then, we'll see everyone very, very soon. Keep rolling, having a good time, and hopefully we'll see you guys on soon. It's 2-2. No, it's 2-1. I'm sorry, 2-1. Al says it's 2-1 American League. All right, guys. Thanks. See you all next time.
Thank you.